Hi guys, how are you all today morning? Good morning. Today is 2nd August 2023. My name is T.S.V. Raghavan and I live in Chennai, Tamil Nadu, India. This is my spiritual vlog on YouTube. Haribol TRSV Nectar NECTAR Nectar. In this particular vlog, in all my previous videos, we have been discussing about the knowledge and information that we have gleaned through the study of spiritual books, scriptures, contemplation on the material universe, and meditation on the spiritual universe. This particular video in this vlog is no exception to that rule. In fact, it is a mere continuation of what we have been doing in all my previous videos. So, kindly subscribe to this vlog and press the bell icon so that I may keep reminding you of all my other videos. So let us continue with the topic for today. For the past several videos, we have been trying to do an analysis of human psyche of every living entity and how it is formed in a particular lifetime. We know by now that it begins forming when this person is born and it ends when this person ultimately leaves for his or her heavenly abode. In this process, we know about the four major factors and the other subsidiary factors that help form the overall psyche of a human living entity. In that process, we have discussed about several case histories which have authenticated this fact of how the psyche of a particular living entity is formed. Today, we shall talk about another such case history which will help us realize how the psyche of a human a living entity comes into existence and remains with him or her till the end of his or her lifetime. So let us begin. There is a remote village in the Godavari district of Andhra Pradesh in South India. There lived a family with the initial Laudho in that area, and these people were humble peasants who led a decent middle class livelihood. On 17th January 1909 or 10 of the 20th century, one boy was born in this family and he was christened as Laudho Lakshmi Varaprasad. This was the complete name of this particular boy. This boy came to be known as none other than the legendary L.V. Prasad, whose name, fame, and achievements last to this day. However, we will try to chart his star-crossed life, and we shall try to find out how the life of a particular person proceeds through a particular past. This Godavari district village is quite ordinary with very ordinary people. But we must remember the age old adage, big surprises come in small packages. That is, when somebody great or a pearl or diamond is found in such an atmosphere, it is a rarity, and so we must celebrate and worship such a rare occurrence. This L.V. Prasad's Prarabdha Karma brought him into this humble middle class family. Prarabdha karma is the first factor that builds the psyche of a living entity. In other words, this prarabdha karma provides the foundation for the building up of the psyche of a living entity. We all know that history is the root of politics, and politics is the fruit of history. What has to come in future depends on what has already happened. In other words, this prarabdha karma was the foundation on which the future of L.V. Prasad was based. What is prarabdha karma? Prarabdha karma is actually a slice of sanchit karma that one living entity brings with him or her to be worked out in a particular lifetime. What is Sanchit Karma? Sanchit Karma is a reservoir or storage of unworked karma of that particular living entity that has been collected through several births and deaths of that living entity and stored in a place called superconscious memory of that particular living entity. Whenever this guy has to be born in a particular lifetime, he or she takes a slice of this unworked karma in the storage and comes into this particular lifetime to work it out in his life in that lifetime. This prarabdha karma is the only asset that a living entity brings with him or her when he or she is born in this world. L.V. Prasad's prarabdha karma began the moment he was born in the family of humble, humble peasants called Laudho. This Laudho family was middle class but fairly comfortable and decent. They doted on L.V. Prasad. L.V. Prasad himself grew up as a nice, decent, well behaved, and intelligent child, but despite his brilliance, he was seldom interested in regular schooling or studies. This guy was tolerated, humored, and indulged in by his family, which also did some other commercial business on the side. When this boy was around 8 or 9, he suddenly became starry eyed and dreamy. The tinsel town of India began attracting this young child, and he wanted to do something big in that tinsel town. Now, this boy lived in his family along with others till the age of 16 or 17 when one day he suddenly upped and left without giving any notice to his family. He had vanished from this village altogether. The distraught family decided that probably this boy had committed suicide or was dead somewhere, and so they tried to forget about this boy. This boy, L.V. Prasad, was not dead. His Kriyamana karma had begun the moment he had left his house. Till then, his Prarabdha karma took care of his life. But after this Kriyamana karma took charge of his life. What is Kriyamana karma? Every human being, whether male or female, who is born in this world is bestowed with what is known as free will by destiny or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This living entity is allowed to use his or her free will to commit some acts based on his or her interests, tastes, whims, fantasies, peer pressure, surrounding atmosphere, and other such factors, and the karma born out of such action is known as Kriyaman karma. According to the destiny of that particular individual, he or she may work out all his or her free will Kriyamana karma in that particular lifetime itself. However, in many cases, it does not happen so. A residue of unworked Kriyamana karma remains at the end of the lifetime of that particular living being. However, besides this, there could be some unworked prarabdha karma, which was the slice of karma that this boy or girl had brought with him or her in that lifetime. The combination of unworked prarabdha karma and unworked kriyamana karma becomes a part of agami karma, which is future karma. This combination is again pasted to the already existing storage of sanchit karma of that living entity. In the next birth, this sanchit karma would be colored with the unworked karma of not only its already existing prarabdha karma, but also the unworked kriyamana karma of the previous lifetime. Hence, when this living entity tries to take another birth, he or she will come with another slice of prarabdha karma, which may include the unworked kriyamana karma of the past birth. Anyway, now coming back to Mr. L.V. Prasad's life, his prarabdha karma probably ended at the age of 16, and from then on, his kriyamana karma took over when he decided to run away from his doting family. These two are the first two major factors that build the psyche of a living entity. The third is a percolation of a juice that comes out of the brain of a living entity and goes down the gross body of that living entity. This juice is formed by the vibrations of the three layers of subtle body of that living entity, which are initially transmitted to this mass of tissue called brain at the cranium of a living entity. This vibration or this permutation and combination of vibrations from the three layers of subtle body are processed and then a juice extracted which is percolated down the gross body of that living entity. This living entity's gross body acts according to this juice which has percolated down his or her brain. By now, we all know that when the spirit soul of a living entity comes in touch with the material world, the irritated material world begins enveloping that spirit soul with four layers of material body. Three of them are subtle and one is the gross, which is the last or fourth layer. The three subtle layers are causal body of intelligence and logic, which is the first layer, astral body of mind, feelings, and emotion, which is the second layer, and etheric body of five senses, namely sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch, which is the third layer. Emanations emanate out of all these three subtle bodies continuously from the birth of that living entity and end at the end of lifetime of that living entity. These vibrations are transferred or transmitted to that mass of tissue called brain of that living entity. There, according to the evolvement, whims, fantasies, tastes, preferences, education, experience, maturity, etc., the brain of that living entity processes these vibrations, giving importance to the vibrations of one particular subtle body over the other. The juice thus extracted out of such vibrations is percolated down the gross body of that living entity, and thus this body reacts according to that juice. This percolation and the action thereof makes the third factor in the making up of psyche of a living entity. In the case of L.V. Prasad, his brain, his intelligence, and evolvement made his brain extract and process the vibrations from most probably the causal body of logic and intelligence, and that juice was percolated down his gross body. Anyway, these three plus the fourth factor, which is known as false ego and which acts as a catalyst in the making of the overall psyche of a particular living entity, played a large part in the life of L.V. Prasad too. False ego is a type of ego where the living entity starts believing that he or she is a product of his or her body or material body only. He or she conveniently forgets his or her spirit soul, which was his or her original identity. Instead, he or she begins believing on or identifying with this body of three subtle layers and one gross layer. Actually, this is the fourth factor that plays as a catalyst in the making of the overall psyche of that particular living entity. Besides these four major factors, there are other subtle or subsidiary factors too, like atmosphere, upbringing, company, surroundings, circumstances, whims, fantasies, tastes, preferences, etc., which also give their own little contribution to the making up of the psyche of a living entity. To give an example, the psyche of a monk, a rishi, a maharishi, a saint, a scientist, an intellectual, a teacher, a professor, a lecturer, an electrician, a plumber, a carpenter, an engineer, a doctor, or any ordinary worker are drastically different because of the permutation and combination of all these factors in the lifetime of every living entity. Thus, The psyche of one differs from that of the other, and this gives a, an ambience or coloring to the overall society of a particular community. Anyway, coming back to our own protagonist, L.V. Prasad. This guy landed in Bombay with dreams of making it big in the tinsel town. He actually wanted to become an actor, but the hard knocks of life soon brought him to his senses and made him land with harsh reality and harder truth on the hard terra firma very soon. Now, L.V. Prasad, who had no money and could not land an actor's role, became a watchman in what is known as Mehboob Studio, which was a very famous studio in Bollywood of Bombay at that time. Here he earned an humble living as a watchman for some time, but because of his willpower, determination, and intelligence, he remained never say die and slowly and steadily climbed up the ladder of success in this hard film industry. From watchman, he became a worker in the studios, and from there, he began getting jobs as some 10th or 20th assistant of a film director. L.V. Prasad never said no to any work because, as far as he was concerned, every work was important, whether it concerned production, direction, or other such work, technical or otherwise, in the making of a film. Slowly, L.V. Prasad started climbing the rungs of success in the direction field, and one day he ended up as the chief assistant director to a German film director. At that time, he came across another aspirant who was already a star in the film industry in his area of operation. The name of this person was Janaki Das, but more about him later. Meanwhile, L.V. Prasad earned and learned a lot about making films. By that time, he decided to become something of a filmmaker instead of an ordinary actor. After some time, when he had earned enough money and experience, L.V. Prasad returned to his home village. His relatives were shocked by this guy's sudden appearance and his evolvement. Nevertheless, L.V. Prasad was the last person to waste his time. He began working in the film industry in the South Indian city of Andhra Pradesh, and then he gravitated to the South Indian film industry headquarters in Madras, which is now Chennai, the capital of Tamil Nadu, India. Here, he launched himself in a film produced and directed by him and with himself as a hero. Believe it or not, this film was a runaway success and it made L.V. Prasad the first few thousands or lakhs in the film industry. Now L.V. Prasad had arrived. He became a film director and began producing regional films and earning profit from them. From there, he progressed further, and after some time, he became a force to be reckoned with within the South Indian film industry. In 1968 or 69, he began making Hindi movies also, which were the stronghold of Bollywood or Indian film industry of Bombay. L.B. Prasad wanted to taste that dizzy success by producing a Hindi movie. At that time, he met the same Janaki Das who he had met long back when Janaki Das was the star and L.B. Prasad was a mere film assistant director. Both had already become friends, with Janaki Das intelligent and very successful businessman of a father predicting that if this L.V. Prasad took care of his health, he will reach dizzy heights. Now the tables had turned. Janaki Das was on the road and L.V. Prasad was already successful as a film producer, director, and actor in the regional side. Nevertheless, because Janaki Das was his friend, L.V. Prasad decided to bail him out, and in that process, he gave Janaki Das a job as a production designer in his Hindi film. From there, Janaki Das' second innings in this lifetime began. To cut it all short, we will concentrate on L.V. Prasad. The film, designed by Janaki Das and produced and directed by L.V. Prasad, was called Jeene Ki Rah, and it was again a stupendous success. Now, L.V. Prasad was not only making successful regional films, but he was also famous in of Bombay in the Hindi film world as a producer and director. L.V. Prasad continued to climb up the rungs of the ladder, so much so that he not only produced several blockbuster movies, but he also started his own color lab and his catering and water service for the film units of the regional film industry. Besides that, because he had nice sons and daughters, they went into another field, namely medical, and they began opening eye institutes, eye hospitals, general hospitals, etc., with the money earned from this film production. By the time L.V. Prasad passed on in 1995 or so, he was already a legend, a living legend in the Indian film industry and the film industry's theater. He was a very successful producer, director, actor, owner of a lab and several catering and service units that catered to the demands of the regional film industry. Besides that, his family had also begun investing in other fields that made L.V. Prasad famous. This is one birth or lifetime which gives us a new idea about the psyche of a human being. Though this guy, L.V. Prasad, was born under humble circumstances, he, with his free will and Kriyamana Karma, reached dizzy heights of success in the material world. He became a movie mogul during a lifetime that spanned around 88 to 90 years. This is one life story which we must try to emulate, and we must take a leaf from the life story of this L.V. Prasad. He used his own psyche and his Kriyamana karma to reach positive and dizzy heights in the material world in a lifetime. We must also try to do something similar to this. Our ultimate aim, however, is to get spiritual, self realized, liberated from repeated births and deaths, and ultimately get delivered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. To achieve this end, first we must be able to use our future Kriyamana Karma positively in the material world in such a way that we keep inching more step by step above the ladder of success, both material as well as spiritual. That is the aim of life for every individual living entity in this world. Whatever we do according to our free will in a lifetime must be positive and must be either material or spiritual. That is all I wanted to tell through the study of this case history. Kindly let me know what you think of my talk on this particular case history. Please give me your expert opinions, thoughts, and ideas so that I may keep reminding you of my other videos and blend your opinions to mine for the sake of the society. Before concluding, let me remind you that I am also a published author with Amazon Kindle and paperback. I write on spiritualism, fiction, and assorted subjects. Spiritualism happens to be my favorite subject. Till we meet in my next video, it is good morning from TSV Raghavan.